Hey everyone, how's it going? So today is my skill day. It's a day late, but sometimes you got to take off a day. If you're too busy, that's okay. Yesterday, I had to work my one day a month that I have to work as a pharmacy intern for a major pharmaceutical chain store in America. As an intern, I'm required to work 5 hours a month. So I decided, yesterday I'd knock that out. And then afterwards, there was some school stuff I had to take care of. And, every now and then, besides life activities, sometimes it's a good idea to rest an extra day. You can come back fresher, your muscles will be more recovered, your mind is more recovered. I could go on and on, but anyways, here's this skill day workout video. Today it's about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. If I remember the math I done before starting, I think it came out to about -4 degrees Celsius. It's very cold today. It's very windy. There's no telling, what the wind chill is. But that kind of leads me into my next point. It's very important, if not the highest priority, anytime you're being physically active, whether you lift weights or you're a power lifter, you do gymnastics, you're calisthenics, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you have your own safety in mind. And going along with safety, something I'm coming more to realize is comfort. If you're not comfortable while you're working out, your mind is not going to be focused on your workout. Your mind is going to be focused on, trying to stay warm. It's going to be focused on whatever's bothering you instead of what you're actually trying to do. And what this can lead to is injuries. If you kind of sloppily do something, in a hurry to, just get it done, and, so to decrease, the amount of time you have to be in discomfort. That can lead to injuries, and also, even if you don't get injured, that leads to decreased performance. It doesn't matter what you do in life, even if you're painting, I've always been a hobbyist person. I'm not a painter, but I've always loved to build my own things, like this gym, for example, that you see me using in all my videos. But something that you can, some advice you can take on anything, regardless of what you do, is if you do it in a hurry, your performance is likely going to be decreased. When we get in a hurry, we're trying to rush and get things done, and like I said, that for this circumstance that leads to injuries, but in any circumstance it leads to decreased performance. So number one priority is your comfort. When you're comfortable, you're more able to think about what you need to do. And then going along with that, kind of like I mentioned a few seconds ago, is don't be in a hurry. Take things slow. Really think about what you're doing, and think about what your goals are with what you're doing. Today is quite a bit longer of a workout video than I'd normally like to post, but I think it's okay. Today is skill day, and that is probably going to be, one of my longer videos. And then also, what's contributing to today's video length is I'm taking it slow. I'm enjoying my time working out. I'm not in a hurry. I'm really thinking about what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And, I think I actually done pretty good today in the stuff that I tried. These are some things that I'm really going to try to focus in any of my skill practice. Even on strength training days, I'm really going to, to focus on the things that I've mentioned during the skill practice and also during the working sets, but especially the skill practice. You always want to be comfortable. You always want to take your time, think about what you're doing, and think about your safety. If we're talking about working out, if we're talking about calisthenics, anytime you do anything, like I said, you need those scapulas in the proper positions. They need to be locked in those positions. And if you cannot maintain posture in what you're doing, then you are doing a progression that is a bit too difficult for your current level. And you have to be able to realize that, and you have to be able to recognize when you need to go up or down in difficulty. There I'm giving a thumbs up, and I'm showing that there's no ice on the bar like there was in that last video. Now I had two shirts and a hoodie on today. Had the face mask, and one of the shirts was like a thicker long sleeve shirt, and I was actually pretty warm today. Even though my hands were sticking out, braving the wind, they actually stayed pretty warm, especially after I got moving, because they have blood circulating through them, and if that blood, passes from my torso, where, it's very warm and then passes into my hands, that'll warm up my hands. Just throwing that out there, just something to keep in mind if you're worried about, not wearing gloves. But anyways, doing my warm-up here, and I also wanted to talk about applying the two-set method to skill practice. Here's some, I don't really know if I'd call this one-arm pull-up. I guess it is kind of one-arm pull-up training, and I get into a bit more of that after this. Nothing like I said I was going to be doing for a while. Like I said, I'm putting the one-arm pull-up on the shelf. At least any kind of significant attempt is going on the shelf. I get into some leg-assisted one-arm pull-up here in a second, and something to keep in mind is that you want, or at least myself right now, and I'm sure other people that are first starting, training one-arm pull-ups and, other skills that they've not trained before and they're not, the most proficient at. The key detail is to make sure it stays very easy. Like in this clip, what you see here, I have almost, I would say probably 75% of the force that's pulling me up is in my legs. And what I'm doing with my arm is just focusing the technique. Now this felt really good today. I did not feel like I was injuring myself at all. I felt like everything was doing what it was supposed to do. And in the future, I'll probably do this exact same thing, but when I get up to that 90-degree lock-off position, right about there, where there's 90 degrees between my forearm and my humerus, I'll probably try to pick up some of the weight off my legs and just see how much weight I can hold at that 90 degrees. But anyways, applying the two-set method to skill practice is very interesting. I've talked about this a little bit. On things that I'm proficient at, like a handstand press here, for example, I'm just going to do one attempt on those, just to keep the sword polished, keep it shined up, and then I'll put it back in the sheath, so to say. There's no need to keep repping those out. But things like this, like the planche, I'm going to have two attempts or two sets, so to say, on those. And on the first attempt, I'm going to do the most difficult progression that I can reasonably do for 1 to 3 seconds. And then the second attempt, I want it to be very easy. I want it to be something that I can hold for a good amount of time. Like there, I tried some kickouts, which I'm not very good at, but then I immediately bridged into a tucked planche hold. So things like with skills that you're not proficient at, the quick and easy way to think about it is you want your first set or your first attempt of that skill to be very challenging. You want it to be the most difficult progression that you can give a reasonable attempt to without sacrificing form. And now that's a key detail. Your second attempt, you want it to be really easy. You want to be able to hold it for 10 to 20 seconds, or you want to be able to easily do, several reps. And I think this is, a very good thing to keep in mind. It seems, I've only done it for, maybe a week or two so far, but I feel healthier, I feel stronger, and my joints seem happier, and I feel like I've gotten better in a very short amount of time. Like, look at my planche attempt there a few seconds ago. Look at my handstand press. I think I have front levers and stuff coming up. Like, look at how much I've progressed in those in just, say, 2 weeks amount of time. But anytime you do skill practice, another important thought is you're just practicing the skill, and you don't want to be fatiguing your muscles. Like, if you practice the skills and then you feel sore afterwards, you've done too much. Like, you've overtrained. You should not feel sore after doing skills. The only time you should feel some soreness is after, like, a strength training day, where your goal is to fatigue your muscles. But anyways, here's something that I've been working on a lot lately, is a slow muscle up. And I actually was able to get some reps today. I know I'm using that big red band for assistance, but today, I made a breakthrough. That is a slow muscle up. I'm slowly transitioning. I'm not using momentum. And, just being able, no matter how much assistance you need, just being able to get where you can complete, a few reps, 1 rep even. You will only get better from there. So I'm going to definitely keep working that. I was so happy, so excited that I was able to get those slow ring muscle up reps. That's going to really allow me to, to reclaim something that I used to be able to do. Here's those front lever attempts. There's that most difficult progression that I can reasonably do. And then here in this second attempt, I'm going to try and make the front lever easy. I'm going to try. It didn't really go to plan, didn't really work out how I had it planned, but it was okay because I was comfortable. As I was talking about earlier, I was warm, my hands weren't numb, and I was able to think on the spur of the moment. So the band assistance didn't work out quite like I had planned. So I immediately adapted to that, and I went to a tucked planche hold. And, tucked planche hold is pretty easy for me at my current level. So I'm able to hold that, for quite a bit of time under tension. But the band didn't quite work out like I had first pictured. I might try to put my feet in that next time instead of putting it, underneath the thigh. But here is some back lever. I think I'm going to start putting a little more effort into my back levers. I think I had in mind that I was really good at the back lever, and I don't think I am really good at the back lever, but I do think I can give it, reasonable effort. There was, somewhat close to a full back lever. But as I've talked about before, the back lever is very misleading. When you're in that position, it will feel like that you have went down past horizontal with your body, and you won't even be at horizontal yet. And so it's very misleading position if you've never tried that before. Like right there, that feels like my feet are about to touch the floor, even though I'm pretty much just at parallel. Here is some handstand push-up practice. Today, I think on this first attempt, I hit I think one reasonable handstand push-up. More of a negative, at least on that part. And there's a negative, and yep, I make it back up, but I lose it at the top. So in this next attempt, I go into this attempt with it in mind that I'm probably not going to be able to do a good handstand push-up today. So I go in with the game plan of trying a handstand push-up, and then when the handstand push-up fails, kind of like it did there, I'm going to go into a freestanding handstand hold for time under tension, because I would like to think that a freestanding handstand I'm somewhat proficient at, at this point. So even though this is a little bit different from a handstand push-up, this is, working my balance. I'm working on my coordination, my ability to hold myself up. So it's kind of along that same thought process that I mentioned earlier, where you want your first attempt to be difficult and your second attempt to be easy. Because like the goal of calisthenics at the end of the day is functional strength. And if what you're doing is not increasing your function, there I'm trying an iron cross, and I think I had a little bit too much assistance. Couldn't quite get into the position, so I dropped bands. But anyways, the goal of calisthenics is functional strength. And if you're not gaining function, if you're not increasing performance in just everyday life, like if you're always sore, if you have bad posture, if things don't feel right, then you're not achieving the basic goal of calisthenics. Like when you sit at your desk, like I am right now, and I'm doing this voiceover, like you should have good posture. You shouldn't be slouching. It's okay to do that every now and then, just for a few moments, but if you're sitting for long periods of time, have good posture. Another thing is balance and flexibility. A lot of people overlook balance and flexibility, and on another note right there is why you always look up when you use the bands, because they slip occasionally, and if they hit you, they show no mercy. It's also looking like I may need to get a new set of bands soon, as I've had these for a few years. But anyways, some things for fitness in general that a lot of people overlook is balance and coordination, and like I was saying, just your functional strength, your overall well-being. These are things we don't typically think about when we think about just working out and building muscle. But when you see me here, I think we're getting pretty close to the clip when I stretch out at the end. Like everything you do, like always be thinking about it from the mindset of your overall well-being. Like I said, when you're sitting at your desk, think about your posture. When you're, doing that, one arm pull-up attempt, or, the front lever attempt, handstand attempt, whatever attempt. Is everything in the position it's supposed to be in? Does everything feel right? Like, does it feel healthy? Or does it feel like, does it feel sketchy? Does it feel like you're injuring yourself? You're straining something? There's a huge difference between doing, more sloppy things and, feeling like you can do something versus doing something and being comfortable doing it, being able to do it with a smile on your face. Those are two very big differences in ability for the exact same type of movements. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, how comfortable are you when you're doing what you're doing? I've worked out, like I said, for probably close to 15 years, and I used to have the mindset of, like the harder I train, the stronger I'm going to get, and the tougher I'm going to be as a person, all these things. And to some extent, in some perspectives, that may be true. Like here I'm working on my balance as well as this loosening up, but To some extent that may be true, but something I came to realize as I get older is, we need to be nice to our bodies. We need to focus on comfort. We need to focus technique, quality over quantity, and making sure things feel right. Because over time, in the long term, you will get so much stronger. You will gain so much more ability, and you'll be so much more happier with your training when you approach it with that state of mind instead of the mindset of the harder I train, the better I'm going to get. It's not always true, and it doesn't do nice things to your body over time. The key is to quality over quantity and take your time. But anyways, I think that's it for today. I hope you guys got something helpful from this video. Take care. Bye bye.